Sage, what about you? Show us Zag.js, which is your new project. Actually, tell us tell us a little bit about what Zag is, and then jump into the demo.
Yeah, for sure. Really nice demo, Lazo. I think that was awesome to see and actually watch. Yeah, I mean, Zach.js is also like I would say like Zach.js is an extension or an extension project from Chakra UI. Just like Lazo described, Chakra UI was right now is primarily a React library, basically. But then we also have some folks working on the Vue.js library. So those are two different like JavaScript frameworks that we're building on top of. But then, as I guess, like as we continued maintaining Chakra UI, I mean, you start to notice that there are a couple of nuances between these frameworks. And it's like it gets like if you wanted to build, let's say you wanted to build a dialogue or a menu component or a drop-down menu, you probably have to write quite a lot of things and quite a lot of complex code. That's like if you showed it to your colleagues, you will even feel embarrassed because it's quite complex. I mean, it's so hard to understand, which we managed to figure this out within Chakra UI. But I think that like over time we started to see lots of like inconsistencies, and we probably just have to like keep manually orchestrating like the on click, on focus, on blur, and all of these event handlers, orchestrating them together into like a unified system. Was pretty hard, and it turned out to be a copy and paste thing. So we have the React team, we have the Vue team. So the Vue team basically goes into the React project, copy over the logic for a popover or a dialog component, paste it into Vue, and maybe just try to tweak all the use state and use ref to sort of just use the Vue terminologies or the Vue syntax. But then the issue then starts to arise where if there's a bug in React, how do we pipe that bug into Vue? Then it feels like, okay, do I have to keep sending like a Twitter DM to the Vue guys, say, hey guys, we just fixed the bug. Can you like help us fix it as well in Vue? So that sort of turned out to be like a huge mess. And that from that process, we learned that it will be really hard for us to serve more JavaScript frameworks if we struggle with just React and Vue. And then there's lots of people sending me DMs like, can we have Chakra UI for Svelte or for Solid.js? I'm like, okay, right now we're just trying to keep up with React and Vue. I cannot imagine like going into multiple frameworks. I guess we'll all be dead if we did that, honestly. Yeah, so what we ended up doing was like trying to think deeply about like how can we model the logic of all our components in a way where it's like completely agnostic of all these frameworks. And then we can take all of this component logic and just like put them into each framework. And no matter what the framework is, it's very easy to integrate the logic of that component into each framework like that. So that's basically the motivation for building with state machines. And I think like watching lots of like videos about state machines from the folks at Stately and David Koshid, taking lots of courses, really just helped me understand this concept. And sort of like I just got into like the mode where I'm like, I'm just gonna try to build something with this and see how it goes. And I think like 8 to 10 months afterwards, I mean, it turns out to be okay. I think I'm not just building something with this; I'm actually shipping something with this. So let's just put it out there, call it in Zag, and we call the name Zag obviously by definition because Zag basically means a sharp change in direction, and that's exactly what we did with that
Oh, I like
project.
your
Yeah,
name. Okay.
yeah.
I see. And I like that. I like that you came up with that solution because I could totally understand how overwhelming it would be if someone's like, hey, can you implement this for this language and this framework? And you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, this is a lot. But it's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, exactly. So let me share my screen and walk you guys through like my current state of the world as far as like Zag is concerned. Hopefully, maybe I can also try to copy from GitHub's UI to sort of like prototype something just like Laza. Let's
Yeah,
see.
that was impressive.
All right, cool. I have my screen up now. So this is Zag.js website. Zag.js is pretty much in beta, but I think we're getting pretty close to stability. So what Zag.js is a set of component logic built by state machines that you can actually use across multiple frameworks, right? So right now we have support for React, Vue, and Solid.js, right? But to help you guys understand what this means, let's assume you wanted to build a number input like this, where you probably have to like increment the number, and your designer sent you a custom design for a number input like this, and you're wondering like, how do I build this out right now? Like, I mean, I have to go into React, set up use state, use effect, and all the things, all the use hooks to sort of like build something like this pretty fast. Most of the time you end up being super buggy, and you have to write lots of tests to cover those. But then what we've done with Zag is to model like all of the logic for that number input component into a JavaScript state machine, which is completely framework agnostic. And then we have a framework binding, what we call that, basically the reactivity framework. We just create helper methods like use machine and use setup for each framework. So you can sort of like take the framework agnostic layer, stick it onto the framework itself, and you have something that just works. So here in React, you have this like Zag.js number input, we have Zag.js React, a couple of hooks to sort of set up the component, and then we expose what we call the API, which is basically the interface that you use to interact programmatically with the number input component. And then it goes on and on to multiple frameworks as well. So this is an example in Vue.js, the JSX version of Vue, and if you're
Could I
all in like, yeah, go
sorry.
ahead.
Um, Moz and Time and me too are curious if you can go full screen and zoom in just a little bit more because the words are a little light. It's yeah, that looks better for me. Just yeah, cool. Thank you. Keep going.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
can go on more. That's okay. Yeah, that's fine. So if you're, I mean, if you're a Vue.js, developer, you can also use Zag within Vue.js as well. We have the JSX syntax and the SFC single file component syntax of Vue. And you can basically get the same thing working in Vue with just a few lines of code and get exactly the same functionality. Same for a newly released Solid.js as well. Right, so all of these frameworks are supported out of the box, and you can get like features like this working. All right, so Zag.js features quite a bit of components. So let's say on your website you need to observe like input like some code, some code that has been sent to you via SMS, some OTP code. You can basically like use that component, the pin input component here to implement that within your project. And as you can expect, it works across like all the different frameworks as well. And it's just a few lines of code and you're done. Right, so this is sort of like the core idea behind Zag, being able to model the component logic in isolation, not tied to any specific framework, and then sticking that onto the reactivity helper methods like use machine and use setup to sort of like connect that to your framework itself. All right, so to help make this like super relatable, what I have here is the GitHub UI. So what we're gonna do is let's try and see if we can model this like code drop down right here. Right, so we have the code button here. When you click on that, it brings up this is called the detail and the summary, but this is sort of like a disclosure element. So it's sort of like a popover. Maybe we can call that a popover. When you click on this trigger, it shows the popover element, and within that popover element, you have two tabs: local tab and code spaces tab, which is basically what you use to spin up a local instance or a cloud instance of that repo. Right, so let's see if we can use Zag to sort of model these two systems. I'm not going to write in live code, obviously, because that would take a lot of time. But I'm just going to walk you guys through what I've been able to sort of like model really quickly.
Okay, cool.
All right, so the first thing we want to note here is this looks like a fairly easy component. Like after all, it's just a drop down. I click on it and then it shows up like that, and I can click on this one as well, and it sort of switches to that tab. But this is a combination of two different patterns. Right? And the first pattern is a disclosure pattern, which means something is not visible, and when you click on the trigger, it becomes visible. Right, so that's sort of like a disclosure pattern in here. And for that, we could potentially use the popover component logic to sort of manage that. And then we also have the tabs pattern, which is also a disclosure pattern as well, which is sort of used to hide and show content, but then based on different tab triggers.
Yeah.
basically. So you have the local tab and you have the code spaces tab. So as simple as the component looks, it sort of combines two different patterns, the disclosure pattern and the tabs pattern in one,
Yeah.
right?
It has a lot going
So
on.
yeah, it has a lot going on. And then if you look closely again, there's another one in here, which is another tab pattern in there as well. But we're not going to get into all that detail. We just want to show how to set up the popover and then set up like the tabs pattern right here. All right. So if we head over to ZagDocs, we have two different patterns we can use. There's the popover here, which is basically that disclosure pattern we just saw. The first one has a trigger and it has like the popover content itself. So that's gonna be like the first half of the equation. We're gonna like sort of steal the code from here and just like use that for the first half. And then the second half is the tabs pattern. So basically, you can sort of like it's also a disclosure pattern, but you can see that it has different tabs, and you can navigate with them both with the mouse and with the keyboard arrows, which like left arrow, right arrow keys. You can use that to navigate the tabs. All right, so we're going to take these two patterns, merge them all into one component there. So let's switch over to the code and see how we can model this really quickly. It's just going to be a walkthrough of everything I've done here. So here in the app of this component, this is a Vite project. I just set up like Vite, yarn create Vite, and that sets up a Vite project. And then I've gone ahead to sort of like set up a model of these patterns all in one. All right, and if you look into the package.json, you see that we have Zag.js tabs, which is the tabs pattern, and Zag.js popover installed. And obviously, as Laza already showed, all the Chakra UI goodies in there as well. All right, so right here you see the pattern here. We have the popover and we have the tabs within the popover, just like we saw in the GitHub UI. All right, so let's see what's going on in the popover itself. It probably looked like, why it seems the popover interaction seems quite complex, but we just have a few lines of code, and that's largely because Zag.js takes care of most of the logic in there. So I'll walk you guys through what's happening within this component. All right, so the first one is we grab the Zag.js popper logic, and I want you guys to probably like think about this a little bit deeply. And you know, when we saw the GitHub UI, we sort of clicked on this. It opens the popper, the popover content. So this serves as the trigger for that popover. So when you click on that, the content shows up. But there's a lot of things. There's a lot of other things going on behind the scenes. Instead of just aside from just like a click, and it's open, true or false, going on there. And to visualize that, we have like this interesting like state chart diagram to show you like this is all the logic that's going on within the popover component itself. Right. So the tenant of a state machine is a component has multiple states, and they have like clearly defined transitions between these states in there as well. So the popover includes like the open states, the closed states, and there are lots of events that can trigger, that can sort of like cause the machine to go between different states, and that's the core tenet of the state machine. It's a predictable system of different states and transitions and events between these states. So you're not trying to sort of like figure out like put some console log in your use effect and try to see like what's going on. Why is the component not working? We are basically trying to sit down and go top down, which is modeling the system and then using that system within your application. Right. So this is like just to give you a quick overview of like what's going on within the popover itself. So we have this visualization in place to help us track bugs. So it's like
Oh,
maybe there's some events that's not meant to happen, or some conditions that we need to put in place before going between states. So this just helps us visualize the logic instead of having to read through like lots of lines of code. I
yeah.
think that visual programming basically gives you a lot of more advantage over like trying to scan through the code, and like you just faint if you don't understand what's going on. Yeah, so that's so that's kind of like what's happening there, right?
That's
So to
cool.
yeah, so to breeze through this, because I know that we're mostly running out of time. we have like this use machine hook, which basically like takes like the logic from the popover. So this is the framework agnostic logic. It's just JavaScript code, has nothing to do with any framework. It's just modeled with state machine pattern. So
Mhm.
in here we have this use machine, which is like the one that connects that JavaScript code with the framework itself.
Mhm.
So here we have like we just put in the popover dot machine, which basically gives us all the functionality. And here we're basically changing the positioning of the popover itself. Because if we switch over to GitHub, you can see that it's sort of like the popover has this very specific positioning to the trigger itself. Right, so we need to sort of like also configure that correctly. So we set the placement to be like, I mean, we want the content to show at the bottom end of the trigger, basically. Right, so that's exactly what's going on there. And then the second bit is the API, right? The API again is the interface between the machine and your UI. Right,
Mhm.
so the machine lives up here, your UI lives down here. There's lots of things that you need to be able to take care of, such as the on click, on focus, on blur, and all of these different events. And it becomes really tricky trying to like explain to you as an engineer to figure out like, okay, what do you use? Do you use on click or on mouse down or on pointer down? It's like, oh
Yeah.
my god, this is so complex. Let me just write my React anyway. I don't want to think about all of this. So instead of burdening people without tasks, what we've done is we take care of all the nitty gritty details, such as like the attributes and the event handlers. We basically just like take care of them within this API interface, and we just say, take this object and spread that object onto your component, so onto your element, and we're going to like provide all the attributes and event handlers automatically. Right, so that's what the API interface means there. This is basically a copy paste of like the JSX or the HTML structure of the pop-over element.
Right.
All right. So the next one here is the tabs. I won't spend so much time here, but then the key thing here is we have the tabs as well coming from Zach.js tabs. And in here we have two tabs, right? Because you can see that we have like a trigger group down here. The first trigger group is local. So let's switch over to the GitHub interface again, and we click the code. You can see that there are two tabs,
Yeah.
local code spaces, right? So again, we just put like the trigger. So we have these functions that helps us like sort of know the kind of properties to spread onto the trigger. So get trigger props, we pass in the local and we put the text in there. Second one, we pass in code spaces and we put the text in there as well. All right, so that handles the tab triggers. And then for the content, we have here the content for local. So that means when you click local, what would you like to show? Right. So here we have like the very basic like clone command, and then so like a copy input field. If you switch back again to the UI, we have clone. We have this input field here to like copy the command, and in code spaces we have quite some fancy looking UI in there for code spaces, and that's exactly what we have in here. All right, so that's like a speed run of the code setup, and if you go back to the app, like all that is happening within the app is a composition of these two different patterns into one. All right, so let's see what this looks like in practice. So I have the Vue.js app running here. Again, I'm just focusing. I'm gonna try to zoom in maybe some more so like we can
That's
really see
still
it.
really good. Yeah.
Yep. All right, so we can see here we have the code button, and when we click on that, we can see that it sort of like shows us like the local tab and the code spaces tab. So this first interaction is the popover pattern, uh, and then if we click on code spaces as well, like I'm super zoomed in, so you can see that. But if I zoom out a bit, you can see like we have like the code spaces tab showing up as well. All right, so again, I click here, and I click outside. It's going to close the popover. And then the really cool part about all of this is it works whether you use your mouse to interact with this or you use your keyboard, right? So you can
Really? So that's like good for accessibility.
Yeah, exactly. So accessibility is sort of taken care of for you, so you don't have to think about it at all. And these are some of the benefits that state machines have to offer, because we can model accessibility into the components, so you don't have to think about them at all as an engineer.
Nice.
So what I'm going to do here is hands-free. I'm going to tab on the code and press enter. So I think for some reason that's probably like not showing up. And if you see that I'm sort of hands free here. I'm using the left and the left and the right arrow keys to sort of navigate between the tabs. And if I hit escape, it's gonna like close that pop over completely and sort of take focus back to the button. If I press enter now, it shows the pop over, and again the local tab automatically gets selected, and we can use the left and right keys again to go between them and sort of like hit escape again to close that. Right, so what we've seen now is a combination of like these two different patterns, all powered by state machines. No styling involved. Like we just use Chakra UI to style this. But what we've done is we took like framework agnostic logic, tied it into React, and used that to build this really nice pattern that exists in GitHub to clone your code bases, right? And all this powered by Zag completely.
Awesome. I'm really impressed with this. I'm definitely gonna try Zag out because I have had moments where I feel like I'm trying to manage a lot of states and I'm like, if this happens, then do this, and it's just a lot. So I'm definitely gonna try this out. I'm impressed. And I love that. Thank you for these demos, y'all. Putting in GitHub, like sliding it in there. I love the
Right, that's so
creativity.
cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Are there any I didn't see any questions in the chat, y'all. Any like questions or thoughts on Zag? If not, we could so I like to do some fun wrap up questions. I know Lazar was like he doesn't have um someone said questions Angular.
Oh yeah, you missed one. Somebody asked if Angular is coming.
Um, I'm not sure if I have an answer to that. I don't have Angular experience, but if there's anyone that has like some Angular experience that's able to help us out, I'm happy to guide to sort of like provide Angular support for these components.
That sounds like awesome time. It sounds like you know Angular. Hop in there and help them out. Let me see if there was anything else. It doesn't look like anything else. Oh, this was still for the Chakra UI stuff. Someone said the styles for each color mode are set on the root body level, right?
Yes, actually. So yeah, so all of the styles are, I mean, even though Laza showed the tokens and the semantic tokens, all of those are processed into raw CSS properties. So we use very little JavaScript in that process. Everything you saw in Laza, basically it's the root selector and a bunch of CSS variables. That's what everything all translates to under the hood, right? So it's not some magic. It's basically just like attaching all the styles to the root. Yeah.
Awesome. Perfect. All right. I will let's wrap up. I'm gonna ask the questions I always ask to all of y'all, and then I'll promote the stuff you all want to promote, especially the code sandbox. I completely forgot about it because Lazar's um demo had me hooked. But I'll do it in a second. So my first questions to y'all is like, what's your favorite food? Has nothing to do with tech or anything, but just curious.
Laza, do you want to go?
All right. All right. So I'm gonna think for 5 minutes, and then I'll. No, probably. I'm a classic guy, so I would say burger.
Yeah.
I enjoy a good burger. Yeah.
Burgers are good. Filling,
Yeah.
tasty. I always say my favorite is roti, but like y'all probably don't know what that is. It's like I mean there's Indian roti, but I like is Caribbean style roti, I guess, because my family's from the Caribbean. But I describe it to some people as like a burrito, but a curry burrito. Caribbean people will be mad at me if they ever heard me say that. What about you, Sage and Pocky?
Yeah, for me, it's like I think my favorite food is one of the local food we actually make in Africa. It's sort of like a vegetable sauce with some like it's called like pounded yam. Basically, it's like this solid form of something like cassava or yam, basically, and then we have a really nice vegetable sauce that goes with that. So it's like one of the best. Each time I get it's like I'm on 100% sage mode each time. So it's like.
Nice. Made me hungry. Someone said, "How about baby back ribs to Lazar?" And well, let me awesome. This is a chakra UI question. Someone said, "Would you use the data?" Let me show it up on here. Would you use the data dash part equals for CSS selectors with chakra two?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, for Chakra UI, we have like all of this. I mean, Zag.js is built to integrate seamlessly with Chakra UI. I think this question has a lot to do with Zag.js and how it connects to Chakra UI. So it's like we carefully build Zag so it just works seamlessly with Chakra, so you don't have to use this selector to style. But what we've done is for other CSS frameworks, like folks that want to write raw CSS or Sass or Tailwind or any other like styling solution, you can basically like use these selectors to find elements. So I didn't get a chance to demo that, but hey, if you ask the question, that means you know. So that's the answer.
Awesome, thank you. And then someone said Nando, and someone said that West Indian people are mad. Um, yeah, I know that. So some West Indian people will be like, "Why are you saying that?" But yeah, I know like my family's from Guyana, so a lot of our culture is very like influenced by like Indian food culture too. But Pachi, want to hear about you. What's your favorite food? Is it like Brazilian food or something?
Actually, it's potato, like French
Oh,
fries, mashed potato, baked with it. I love how versatile potato is, and I'm just sad that they're not vegetables and they're not more healthy because if I could, I would potatoes all day. No.
I love potatoes too. Like you said, it can be made into anything. French fries,
Right.
like home fries, mashed potatoes, just everything is so good for. Okay, cool. All right. We've been going on for a while. So stuff to promote for y'all. I know the code sandbox. Let me show it up on here. So if y'all wanted to check out more or go deeper into that Chakra UI's code sandbox, I know I had them on a time constraint. So if you wanted to go deeper into it, here's the link right here. And I know Pachi also had put it in the chat. Um, Also, go ahead and follow them. I don't know if y'all want to put your handles or your Twitter handles or anything else you want to promote into the chat. Um, Cool. I'm about to post Lazar's Twitter, so follow him there. Follow me too, Black Girl Bites on Twitter, and follow Pachi. I think your name is Pachi Codes on Twitter as well. And yeah, if there's nothing else from y'all, any other last comments or words you want to say?
On my side, no. Probably just also like want to like wrap it up by appreciating both of you, Rizal, Pachi. Thanks for having us, and GitHub. Now and always, I'm always grateful for GitHub. So I think that I think that going forward we have huge plans as Chakra UI to actually like grow and build even more tools to sort of like help bridge the gap between design and code. This is like the core vision that we have as Chakra UI, and I'm really excited to have folks like Laza on the team as well to help push this forward. So that's just it. So Laza is just like live on stream telling you thank you.
Awesome. Someone said, do you have a code sandbox of the Zag example, or like maybe a GitHub repo or something?
I don't have it. It's purely local, but I'm happy. I'm gonna push it out and maybe like post that on my Twitter. So just follow me. I'll put it out as well.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you so much for joining us. Like I know you were saying thank you to GitHub, but like I really just appreciate you taking the time. I know it's nighttime for both of you. So I really appreciate you hopping on. And also thanks, Pachi. You were super helpful with just like navigating the chat. I realized I wasn't even paying attention to it for a really long time. So thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who tuned in.